Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Life Conversations with a Twist. I'm like so excited for this conversation today. I actually just met Carly. We are mutually connected to Keisha. She's another podcaster, one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And again, when I like have a second to like listen to a podcast, I turn her on because she's always so motivating and uplifting.
She
And then
is.
she interviewed you, and you've been like coaching and working with her, and I would love to hear more about that as well. But your story is so cool, and it's something that I think everybody needs to hear because we're all in this like struggling of this whole like online social media space. So thank
Yes.
you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Heather. I'm so excited to be here.
It's fun. So, Carly is a podcaster too. And so we'll talk about that as well. So it's always fun to like, talk to another podcaster because
It
it
is.
feels a little bit easier, but
It really does. It really is. Like you understand what this is like from the other side. Okay.
yeah, we got
We have
this.
some common ground.
We do. Okay, so tell everyone a little bit about who you are, where you live, a little bit into your inside of your life.
Yes. So I live in Utah. I am a mother of two little toddler girls. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And I'm married to my high school sweetheart, which I like to include always because you don't hear that all the time, but it's actually hilarious because where I live, like a couple of my neighbors I can see from my house are also high school sweethearts. And so we have this little like high school sweetheart group in my neighborhood. It's kind of fun. But married to my high school sweetheart, living in Utah, podcasting, trying to help people the best that I can with navigating social media, life without it, and all the things in between, and just trying to take life one day at a time and really enjoy where I'm at when I'm there.
I'm so excited to like even dive into this because there's just so much to talk about. But I know this topic and what you're doing is literally going to change people's lives. I'm not just saying on my podcast, but like the movement you're making and like the direction you're going. So I'm so excited to have you
Thank
on
you.
and to like be here because um I struggle with this topic as well. So let's
Yeah,
dive in.
let's do it. I'm
Let's do
ready.
it. Tell us how you got to this point. So, just a little backstory of listening to your podcast. Carly is like not online. She's not social media. And it's so funny because every time I go to interview someone, I always like social media stalk them a little bit because you're like, okay, I just want to know a little bit more to like
Yes.
touch on. And you have nothing. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I was like, why can't I? I'm like, that's right, because she's not online.
It makes it a little bit more difficult. It really does.
But I love this concept of being offline and being present and being more involved in like taking it day by day, like you just mentioned. So tell us like how you got to here.
Okay, yes. So I never intended on ending up offline when I first embarked on this journey, I guess you could say. I didn't think it'd be something that I did indefinitely, but I found myself, this was in 2015 is kind of when this all started for me. I was in college at the time and I was in my second year of college. And well, I can't technically call it my second year because I didn't have enough credits, but my first year of college. And I had moved locations 3 times within 9 months because I would go to one place and I didn't like my experience there. I felt like I wasn't having the ultimate college experience that all my peers were having online or even people that I knew in real life at the time. I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Let's move somewhere else and try over here. So I found myself the summer of 2015 in southern Utah, like 3 hours from where I live now. And it was a summer semester. So I was taking like 2 classes and I moved there with my boyfriend, who's my now husband at the time. And I was just, this summer, I was like, okay, I'm determined to kind of figure out what my life should look like because I feel so behind right now because all of my friends are on their career paths. They're knocking out college to get onto the path that they want to go on. And it just seemed like everybody had everything figured out online that I was, consuming. And I was really stuck in that comparison of feeling, oh my gosh, like I am totally behind. I have no clue what I'm doing. And it was like a feeling of insecurity because I'm going, why does everybody else have this and I don't? And like my college experience even isn't as exciting as everybody else's. Like, what is wrong with me, essentially, is how I felt. So that summer, I, amidst a couple of classes and a lot of afternoon naps and a lot of watching Netflix, I was on social media looking through, I followed a lot of bloggers because in Utah, I don't know if you know, but Utah's like really big blogger central.
Oh,
And
hmm.
especially in 2015, a lot of bloggers in Utah specifically were really getting big at that time. And so I was thinking, well, I'm going to the gym every day. People have always asked me all through high school into college what I do for my workouts. People have always been curious. You should, send us what you do, tell us about what you do. So I'm going, maybe I should start a blog because everyone else had blogs at this time. It looked like the right thing. People were like exploding. So I said, maybe this could work for me too. So I had my boyfriend take pictures of me at the gym and I bought a domain for my blog and I even drafted up a few posts. And I was ready to launch this thing, and I understood fully that this would mean I was going to be spending more time on social media, but like putting myself more out there. And I thought I was ready for that. So as I went to publish my very first post on my blog, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God, and I had this full body overwhelming feeling that this is not my path. Like, Carly, don't do this. Don't publish this first post. Not that anyone would have seen it anyway, because I hadn't like done any background, like, hey, I'm starting a blog in the first place. But it was very clear to me that he was saying, this is not your path.
Mhm.
And so initially, when I felt that, I was surprised that I was relieved. I was like, okay, well, I don't have to like put myself out there so much like I thought I might be needing to. And like all the judgment that I knew was going to come from that. But I had honestly overlooked that because I was so just ready to feel like on the right path towards something. So like if this could have been the thing, even though it was going to be uncomfortable, like whatever, at this point, I just want to feel like I'm moving somewhere. And so when I didn't hit publish and I sat there feeling relieved and then frustrated, going, well, then what should I do then? Because I'm trying to figure this out. I have no problem taking new action, but like I really thought this could be the thing for me. And the next impression that I had was to just create some space, to just like get still. And I knew exactly what that meant. I knew that I needed to, in order to create space, for me, that meant I needed to take some time away from social media because it was just so noisy. I was just so consumed in that, in what everybody else was doing, in what I was being pressured to feel like I should be doing in 2015 when blogging is like blowing up. Like I could not even hear my own thoughts or what I truly wanted or what God really wanted from me. So I'm grateful that I even had that intervention, to stop me from doing that in the first place. But that is how I got offline. And then I didn't intend to stay off. But what I found on the other side of that decision to create the space and to sit still for a while was too good for me that I ended up not going back.
And you haven't been back.
And I have not been back. No.
That's so crazy. Wait, you are on Twitter?
So I'm on YouTube.
I was like, I knew there was something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there's something. And that I guess I always say, oh, I forget to address the elephant in the room because this is like an ongoing conversation on YouTube. Like you say you're offline, but you are on YouTube. And yes, some people consider YouTube social media, but the way that it interacts, like you're not following your friends on YouTube, you're not following your family. It's like very rare that you really know the person that you're following on YouTube. And I use YouTube for a place to learn something, like how to paint a wall and not like make lines. You know what I mean? Some people use it in other ways and it can be very addictive. I do always acknowledge that. But I never had that relationship with it. And the reason I decided to go there is because as I was offline for a couple of years, people started to ask me, Carly, like, what does it look like on the other side? How are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this? And so because people started to ask me, I'm going, well, maybe I could share this on YouTube because people are what's the right word?
Clearly,
Clearly
clearly
curious. That
curious.
was the
Yeah.
tongue twister. I'm like, wait, I know I'm right there. And maybe I can help someone else be inspired through my story and share that they aren't alone. And so that's why I took to YouTube. And honestly, this is kind of going off on like a YouTube tangent now, but we'd probably get here eventually. But I've always had a very good relationship with YouTube because from the day that I went there, I never was out to become a YouTuber. I was never following the numbers and trying to like build this huge presence there. I was trying to just offer up support and also grow my email list. I would create little downloads that I could start growing an email list because I knew I wanted to do a business. I didn't know what kind of business at the time. And so YouTube for me, since it wasn't traditional social media and I could share a message and like spread impact that way, and grow an email list, it was just like the right fit for me. And it's been honestly a great experience with having that approach and that mindset going into it.
Well, and I think too, I think it's different how like how you use it, right? Like you say you post to it to educate others, but if
Yeah.
you're not spending the time consuming it, I feel like they're so
Mhm.
much different. Like it's different from like just posting it and putting your message and your, your thoughts and in what you're doing out in the world versus
Yes.
somebody who's like literally on it for hours and hours, like my
Yeah.
whole entire family.
Yes. Yes. Very different relationship that forms.
Yeah. I'm not, I mean, I know the like importance of YouTube, and now like if I'm like looking for something, of course I'll like search on it, but I'm not a big YouTuber. I get
Yes.
caught up in Instagram.
Yeah. That is the number one place that people get caught up in. I hear the major problem for everyone is Instagram. It's the biggest problem out there.
Well, now they have reels, and that was the thing. Like everybody was like, "Oh, now I can like I don't need to go to TikTok because I'm not on TikTok either. But now I can watch the same thing on reels. That's where I get like sucked in. And
So,
oh, I have so much stuff I want to talk about. Okay, so you haven't been online since 2015. That's
yeah.
almost 10 years.
Yes. I mean, I'm closing in on a decade. I can't even believe it. You can't even believe it.
So doing what you're doing right now and educating people, and like obviously this is a business, right? Like I don't know at what point in your what in you're doing where you make money doing it, but how do you get people to find you besides YouTube of like what you're doing and
Yes.
to get this message out to the world?
So things like this,
Mhm.
collaborating with people, and honestly, because I have really tight-knit community. I've always been very interested in the people who were curious about life offline. And I genuinely want to know their story. I want to know how I can help them. And so because of that, I've cultivated this very tight-knit community that people share about our community. I just this last week had an email come in from a girl sharing with me her infertility journey and like how it related to social media. And I was just supporting her. We'd been emailing back and forth for a couple of weeks. And she's like, by the way, my cousin is so and so who's been in my community for like 4 years. And she's like, she's the one who told me about this and about you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see the connections that come through word of mouth. So a
Mhm.
lot of it is YouTube. People will go to YouTube, they'll find a video that I talk about living life without social media, something hits right for them, and they will go from there to my website, plug into the community that way, or through my podcast. My podcast, actually, surprisingly, I've only had it for just almost a year in September, but I always ask the question when people join the community. I say, how did you hear about us? Because I want to know where they're coming from. And it's almost to the point where it's 50-50 YouTube and podcast. So that's how it works. There's those two things.
So those like both of those are very inspiring to me because I'm in this like weird spot right now in my personal life journey and my career journey and my podcast journey, and this is where I'm like feel like I'm getting stuck and hung up,
Yeah.
and especially with my podcast and everyone's, like I love what I do and I love the women that I have on here, and like so many of these stories are like life changing for other people, but everyone's like you need to get on YouTube, and so I'm like oh god, or I'm feeling like I have to post a reel, or like I need to make content and I need
Right.
to make reels, and it like all becomes so overwhelming, and so it's inspiring to know that you're growing your community and you're like following, especially on podcasts, and just these two
Yes.
little avenues.
Yes. Like I feel like I say it's like a diet plan. Like there's all these ways you can get in better shape or lose the 10 pounds that you've been hanging on to for a while. Like there's so many different ways to go about doing it that
Mhm.
work. Like
Yeah.
it's not that it doesn't work, but there's also a way that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to feel like is good for your lifestyle or good for you personally. Like maybe you hate to run, but you'd be happier to like change your diet. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's always something else that you can do. So I think about social media the same, or even like business, promoting your business the same way, because social media hasn't been here forever. And obviously, it's incredibly powerful tool. It works. It works for a lot of people, but also it doesn't work in certain ways for a lot of other people too. And specifically, how it relates to how you feel about creating that type of content and how you feel doing it. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, why are we creating businesses? Why are we trying to make impact? Why are we doing this? And it's to create more freedom, right? To live maybe more how we want to live. But if you're doing that in a way that's like sucking away your soul during the journey and you're hating every single like reel that you have to create because you feel like you have to because so and so said that's how you build your community, that's not worth it, in my opinion. It takes away the joy in the journey, which isn't that the point? Like if everything ended tomorrow and you're like, dang it, I didn't make it to like that goal that I wanted, like I didn't have that subscriber count, But like you could say, oh, I had a really good time like doing it in the way that I wanted to do it. That was a lot of fun, or that felt really good for me. Or it
Mhm.
didn't feel good. Dang it. I wish I could have done it differently. Or I've hated this journey. I've hated my business because I hate social media. There is always another way. And I always say it might require you to be more patient, be more creative. But
Mhm.
like after all, if we're on this entrepreneurial journey, aren't we creatives? Like, aren't we there to like shake things up and to like do things in our own way? Like, let's not lose sight of like a true entrepreneur and what that means, because that's what it is. And sorry, I get off on a tangent here.
No, I love
Yeah,
like
continue.
I love it. And you said something that spoke to me. And so what I believe in business, and this is what I like teach my clients, is it's all about connections. It's all about building relationships. It's about connecting to people in your community to like
Right.
grow your community. And I think about my business, not my podcast, but like my business
Yeah,
itself. It's called the Connection Hive because I believe
I
in the
love
connections.
that.
And
Yes.
every single, not like, I just had this like aha moment. Every single client that I've had has come from a connection, has come from somebody referring, has not come from someone on social media.
Yes. Okay. I love that you just had that, because this is the thing. It's like you almost get so seduced, or you just get your own voice, or what's even happening in your business gets so like diluted, because we feel like we have to have this massive presence on social media because that's what everyone tells us we have to do.
Yep.
And these people who are telling us that have these massive platforms. So we're going, oh, obviously, like they know, like this has worked for them, without taking into consideration that they've been doing this how many years longer prior to us, and like things have changed, and I know they understand that, and they'll talk to the changes that happen. But still, like someone who's starting right now like doesn't have this platform that you built when things were not the way that they are. Like it's very different. And so you have to remember, and then like you said, I've had so many people say that to me. They go, oh, the way I even get my clients isn't actually even through there. Like I That's an epiphany. And it's true. If we pay attention to where it actually comes from,
Mhm.
whether it's another number of a follower on your Instagram page, does that even translate into a client? Like, where do they actually come from? And where can we spend more time doing that? So, if it's through the connections, how can we build more of those in-person connections or get more of those referrals instead of spending so much more time on social media when that's not even where it's translating for you? So, I love that you had that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. The other podcaster that I listen to is Jenna Kusher, and
Yes,
she was just talking. She's so big on like email,
I love her.
like email building and email newsletters and things like that. And I actually just sent out my first one last week,
Oh, I love
because
that.
that's the other thing now that I'm trying to focus on is like growing that and growing the email.
Yes.
And you had touched on that. Like you can grow your business, you can grow your community through email, which is like old
Mhm.
school way before social media. That's how people got business. And so, um,
Yes.
yeah, you just kind of like shifted my perspective a lot right there.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I love the email because it really does, like with community. Like that's how my community started. Now I have a separate platform that's not on social media, that's not my email list, where my people can gather and talk and support each other. But that just started earlier this year.
And
My community's been
You
over
use
email. Yes.
Mighty. Yes.
Mighty
I'm in a
Networks.
networking group and we use that platform and I love it. Like
Yeah.
it's like, we're a network and we, have our
Yes.
businesses and we like promote there. And I love that.
Yes, it's so great. And I'm glad you're getting into email because I love it. I feel like it's such a great way to really connect with your audience and really get to know them. I mean, I will have names pop up and I'm like, I know exactly who this is in my email. Like, I'm so excited to hear from you. That's how I've done it. That's how I've built an engaged community, is it all started with email.
I
And
love that.
still that's like the foundation to it.
I want to talk a little bit about social media, and I think of influencers, and I there's one that stands out in my head. She's a local one, and you see them like putting all this content out, and then if they say one thing that somebody does not agree with, whether it's political or about anything, right? I mean, people are upset about it. How this
Mhm.
like flurry of mean messages come back out, or people posting rude things about them, and then like how that damages your ego or your self-esteem, and then you see them so upset about people's comments, and it's like, why would you put yourself in that position to just like bring you down? And,
Right.
it's all about like building confidence and, like making you feel good in your life. And like, why would you want to feel shitty because of one thing that you believe in or one thing that you do or one like
Right.
store you went to?
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's actually insane how people can say things and there's no consequence for it too. Like you can just speak your mind online and there's no consequence. Like no one's gonna, you would never say that probably to someone's face. Unfortunately, like influencers are like targets for that, but they're choosing to like, put themselves out there in that way. And that's just a cost that I guess you choose to pay. Someone just asked me about this the other day. They were asking about, or they were talking to me about a specific influencer that they had followed and how she had posted something that really turned a lot of people off. People were like highly, highly upset about it. And they're going, how do they either separate themselves like from this? This just would be so damaging to any person who's receiving this amount of backlash and something. And I also feel like there can sometimes be a disconnect sometimes when influencers get to a certain level and they have a large enough following that there's almost like the disconnect from this world that they live in influencing versus like where the consumer is sometimes gets a little too separated. And so they'll say something that really pisses these people off because they're like, this is totally unrelatable. And then it's like, well, why do you follow them in the first place? But that's another thing because, okay, when someone will take the time to comment something negative or something rude or destructive to somebody else, what type of person is that? Because that is energy and time you're taking out of your day. And this is something that I actually just drafted an email up to for a friend that I just met a few weeks ago. She was asking me, I was at Powerhouse Women, the conference in Arizona.
Oh, I wanted to go to that.
Yeah,
I'm
it was a
going
lot of
next
fun.
year. I swear to God,
Yes,
I'm going next year.
it was really fun. And I met this girl who I actually met in Florida earlier this year. Anyways, we reconnected and she was asking me, she's like, I know you do YouTube. And she said, I'm doing YouTube. And she said, I'm almost gonna get off because of the comments. She's like, it is so bad for my mental health. So how do you do it? She's like, how do you separate from that? And I had to be honest. Honestly, I don't get a whole lot of negative um, feedback on my YouTube channel. People will comment things about my appearance. People will say things about, the irony and what it is that I'm doing. And I I'm drafting this to her right now because I just have been thinking about it. I'm like, what can I say to like help her understand how I navigate this? Because I would never consider myself like a large scale or even small scale influencer. I'm just spreading a message online on YouTube.
Yep.
And so I told her, I said, the reason I think that doesn't bother me is because I, first of all, I'm so grounded in what I'm doing without the approval or the validation of anybody else. I'm like, I'm very spiritual, I'm very religious. And so I'm like, God has very much placed this upon my heart. And so for the people who need to hear it, the people who this is for, they will hopefully receive this. And the people that it isn't for, they can hopefully just go the other way. And then the people who are going to take the time to comment about my appearance or to comment about the irony in what I'm doing, obviously it's not for them, but to take the time to do that, to like try to tear somebody else down, like that's not someone I'm willing to waste my energy and time on because it's not worth it. They don't deserve that. Like those types of people, like they should not be given the time of day. And I know that it can be hard to just, it can be easy to just say that and not actually fully feel that. But I really do feel that because it's a total perspective shift. And like, it's such a low point. Like clearly they're probably dealing with something in their life and they need to like try to take that out on somebody else. And it just happens to be the person who's, putting themselves out there. But I don't know how I got there. But here we
Also,
are.
I just want to be like, who gives a F? Like, who
Yes.
really gives a fuck what people think about you? Like, at
Yes.
the end of the day, like, you live your life. You should focus on yourself and your business and your family and all the people that matter to you. Like, who really cares?
Who really cares? And it's not like is if their life must not be going very well, or they might, I don't know, need something else to distract them from, which we all do at times. But I'm like, really? Does it impact your life if I said something that really pissed you off, or I wore a shirt that you don't agree with? Like, does that really impact your life directly, like you said? No, it doesn't. And
Oh,
so it just gets crazy. The online space can be crazy.
it is
It's a
crazy.
headache, yes.
And it's really crazy right now with all the political stuff going on. It's just like, blah. I'm like, I don't
Oh,
even want to.
I
Yeah.
can't even
Um,
imagine.
one thing that I have a question for you is, and one thing that I'm struggling with
Yeah.
personally, I think I'm in a space that I could not completely go offline. I think
Yeah.
I'm in a space that I need to shift my perspectives and put more energy around things that are going to move me forward, like YouTube or my podcast or email list or like things like that. Um, I use social media a lot because a little background on like what I've done in my career is I was a client relations manager. So
Mhm.
like that was my job, is to like make those connections with people to, build trust and, to build these relationships for their business or for the business that I work for, right? And so I really do believe in like that part of why I was on social media. Like I was like following my clients so I could like know what they
Right.
were doing, that they went on vacation, that they had 3 kids, that they, because it I believe that it really does like kind of seal the deal and kind of build trust. You're like, oh, she actually like pays attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
She cares. So
Yes.
but I do need to limit it. So what advice do you give somebody who knows that they can't completely get offline? Because I think there'll
Yeah.
be people who are like, how do I just like do a little less of it? What do you
Yes.
say for that person that's kind of in that boat?
So this is actually a lot of people in my community too. It's not everybody is completely offline or has even the desire to go completely offline. It's more finding out the way that it works for you. And
Mhm.
so for people who are trying to just like scale back, like you said, spend less time in that space. Honestly, it can be as simple as having it in your calendar. When are you going to be on there? And like redefining how often you really need to be there and being honest about that because it's become something that is just so easy to access at any point in time. And we just end up going there without any real intention. But if we can frame and reset the relationship with social media to be something that is with the utmost intention. Like as much as you would schedule something in your calendar to like, okay, on Wednesdays at 11:30 is when I respond to emails until 12:30. And that is the time that I do that. And then I am done with email and on to the next thing. Like putting social media in that space too. Not
Mhm.
letting it be something that can just come when it wants to or when you want it to, but you're choosing.
Mhm.
You're in charge and you know exactly why you're going there and for how much time, and then you can move on afterwards. And sometimes that doesn't even work for people because for some people, it really genuinely is an addiction. And so it's hard to just like turn it on and turn it off because you can still get sucked in for hours. But doing things like setting a timer to like remind yourself, I'm on for this period of time. And then the timer goes off and that's like your redirection moment to turn to something else or to get off.
Yeah.
But really understanding why you're going to use social media, like you were very clear, like you think it's very important for like keeping up with people so that you can like build these types of deeper relationships in that way through with clients. So you know what's going on in their life. Um, and then do you need to check in on that person every single day? Like not really. Hopefully they're not updating every single day. I'm not sure what's going on online right now, but I know some people do that maybe like a couple times a week or once a week or once every two, depending on the person, is all you really need to be able to like scroll back through and see the update from the person. Or if there's someone specific, you can even look them up directly and like see if they've done any updates and then cut out the rest of the unnecessary noise in the meantime. Because a lot of people will say, I don't want to be on social media personally, but for business, I would love to be on social media for certain reasons, but not too much. And
Mhm.
so if you can learn to separate the two or to really be disciplined with yourself or to find support around this, which the community is very much for. Like, find people who are also trying to do this too, because it can feel kind of isolating being like, why do I feel like I have to step back from social media when everybody else seems to be like upping their presence online? Like, am I too sensitive? Like, what's going on here? And now most people are struggling with it. It's just something that we don't talk about. And because I talk so much about it, I hear so much about it. And I'm like, let's have this conversation because most people struggle. I
Mhm.
have maybe had one person in the 6 years that I've been talking about this, one person say that they love social media. Most people will say, I could really benefit from taking a step back, or I really hate that I have to be on social media, or oh, it's always negative. It's always negative 99.999% of the time. And so that's enough to tell you that most people are struggling. We just don't talk about it enough.
Yeah. I think for me it's like eliminating like the 5 minutes you have while you're standing in line at the grocery store,
Yeah.
or I mean I was very guilty of this. I was waiting in line at the car wash today and I did a quick story, but I was telling the world this is what I was doing today. And
Yeah.
I'm like, It's those moments that I'm like, do I really, or I'm stopped at a stop sign. Do I really like why? Like it is, it's addiction. You're like, I have
Yeah.
to know like what's the next thing. But I
Yes.
love that you said like cutting it into time, like setting time, setting like, okay, you can like I feel like I usually do it like first thing in the morning. Even then I kind of push my time to like get up and go to the gym, right? So it's like
Yeah.
limits that, but even like before bed or one thing that I have eliminated in my life, I'm not a big TV person. Like
Me
that's
either.
one thing that I've kind of cut out. I always fall asleep anyways. Um
No, I can't stay awake for a show to save my life,
and
so why?
I try so hard and then I fall asleep. Or I love watching like a football game or something, but
Yes.
my husband is constantly putting on the news and I'm like, I
Oh, I can't.
don't want to know what's going on in the world. I know
Yes.
there's a lot of crappy things going on right now and I probably should know because I have children, but I really don't care. Like
Yes.
because then it
I'm in
just
the same boat.
it's like it just interrupts like what we're doing or
It disrupts the peace. I'm like, I
right.
can't. I'm like, if I hear about this and I'm like stressed out, I'm like thrown off course for the day. And I'm like, I just don't need that. I just don't.
Yeah. Do you watch TV?
No, I
Yeah.
like, okay, during sports season, like football season upcoming, like my husband will turn on a game and I do enjoy sports. So, like, I'll watch it in the background. But like, honestly, at this season, like, especially being in starting a business, I'm like, I just can't. I just can't. I'm not to the point, I guess, where I can just relax. But I have a hard time watching TV and
Hmm.
watching series, especially because when we first got married, we just watched on Netflix and chill. That was like
Yeah.
the newlywed life, which was great for that period of time.
Yeah.
But now, like between the kids, I'm like, okay, when the kids go down and like I finally have time to do what I want to do I really want to watch TV?
Yeah.
No, I'm like, I have other things I really want to do. I really want to learn. That's just like the season of life right now, I feel like for me. But also, it's easy to get sucked into a series and like need to watch next, and you lose sleep. Or,
It's like
you
one
know,
o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're like,
yes,
why am I still awake right now?
yes, exactly.
How has your relationship changed? Well, I guess, well, it has changed because you were married when you were on social media at one point, but talk
Yeah.
about your relationship with your husband and your family because you aren't online. Because that is my thing right now. Like, I look up and every single person in my household is on a phone consuming whatever they're consuming and it like that is one thing that I need to like start putting kibosh on, and especially my husband, like we're laying in bed and we're both scrolling, sending each other like videos back and forth,
Yes.
like we're that couple, right? And I'm like, god, we've lost so much like being together. And so I'm
Yes.
curious how your relationship is without it.
I
Inspire
this is Yes, this is like the number one thing for my life personally that I value more than anything is the quality of the connections in my life, and specifically with my immediate family, like my husband and my children. Because again, at the end of the day, what really matters, and it's so easy to get so casual about the little things and the little habits and the little phone that just slips in here and there. But the impact that that actually has, especially over time, is huge. And so not being on social media has allowed for like me to sit down on the couch with my husband, and instead of being like semi irritated with him that he's like scrolling through looking at somebody else that's not me, like that doesn't exist. And
us.
so it allows for like conversation, and not conversation about something we had seen online earlier that day, because that's another thing where it's like, oh, did you see that meme I sent you earlier? Or like, oh, that, because I know I have most of my friends are on social media. And so I know the dynamic between the relationships, and it's not everybody, but it changes the conversation to things that are more meaningful and more in depth. And for me, it's allowed for like full transparency and full, like, if there's an issue, I'm not gonna like be like upset about it and maybe distract myself with my phone or with social media and like wondering about somebody else's relationship online because I'm like dissatisfied with mine at the moment. It really, it's like, okay, let's get to the root of this and let's just take care of this now, because we don't really have that easy buffer in between. And it doesn't drive an unnecessary wedge in relationships, because no relationship is perfect. It's hard, right? To like maintain that connection, especially with kids. And so with my children, I feel like it's almost made it easier for me to even like I have a smartphone, and even though I don't have social media, it can be easy to pick up my phone. So I have to like leave it in the other room because I really don't want my kids to see me on my phone. I really am like very, very conscious about that, because I want them to not lose the creativity and lose the simple joy in childhood. Because like we didn't have that growing up.
No.
And like my daughter, even with the TV, she would love to watch TV all day. And I'm like, honey, we don't watch TV all day because I'm like, God has blessed you with this beautiful, healthy mind and this beautiful, healthy body. I'm like, we are going to get creative. We're going to use our bodies. We're going to move. It's fun to watch a show and like be entertained for a bit. I love that for you, but not for as long as you'd like all day long. And so that's the thing. I'm like, my children honestly help me. They help me because I want to be an example for them and I want to set the tone for what things are going to be like in our family. We don't sit around on our phones, not to say anything negative about anybody who does, but that's just not what we do in our house because we are here to connect with each other
Hmm.
and to have conversations and to be upset and talk through the things that are upsetting us. And so that very much is the dynamic in my family and is one that I'm very, very conscious and dedicated to forming as my kids grow because I want a super connected family. The last thing I want is to lose connection with the people who matter most to me, which is the people who live in this house. I'm like,
Yeah.
we at least have to have this is what we can control. I
Yeah.
can't control what anybody else is doing out there in the world. I cannot, it's out of my control, but I can control what happens in this home
Yeah.
and the connection that we are fostering together. And so it's been everything for the peace in my home and the
Mhm.
connection that I have with my husband and with my kids. And I wouldn't trade it because I have so many conversations with friends who I love dearly, who struggle with social media. And it really does drive a wedge in their relationship and with their kids. And they know that, but they still have a hard time doing anything about it. And so it goes back to addiction. And honestly, I've had enough of these conversations that what it really seems to be is addiction under the surface. And everyone hates to hear that because no one wants to think that they're addicted.
Right.
But it really helps to know how to tackle the situation when you see it for what it is.
Yeah.
But that's a roundabout way of saying what is
I
created
love
for
it.
me to be off social media for my family. It's everything. It's the
Yeah.
connection, it's the peace, it's the presence that I have here in my home and with my family because I don't want to miss the things that matter that are happening right before my eyes every single day.
And sometimes it's just like taking somebody to say that to be like, oh shit, like I
Yeah.
do need to clean it up. And I think too, for me, like there is a meme or like a video thing that or I think it's an image of like your child coming up to you and they're constantly on their phone. And I've said this to my husband multiple times. Our son, I have a 3-year old as well. He acts up when we're both on our phone.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're not paying attention to him.
Right.
Not engaging with him. We're not paying, that he literally, that's when he acts up.
Yeah.
All he wants is your attention. All these
Mhm.
children want is your attention. And if
Yeah.
you could just like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect in this at all, but I'm trying to be more aware of it when it's happening because I'm like, okay, I need to put it away. Like, and
Mhm.
now I'm a place in my business where I'm not doing events. So I'm not constantly like, oh my God, do I have to check my email? Like, I don't need to check my email. My clients can wait till Monday. Like,
Yeah.
nothing is like life or death, right? Like,
Yes.
just put it away. And when you
Right.
have a moment when your child's taking a nap or they're in bed or you're not in front of them, then you can check it. But like, I'm trying to be so much better at that.
And you know what, Heather? Like that is so admirable because the awareness of it in the first place, so many people don't even have. And so, like, pat yourself on the back for first of all having that awareness and like being like, okay, I want to like do something about this because that's where it starts.
Yeah.
And until you have that, you're not going to do anything about it. But like, that's great. I'm proud of you for
Thank you.
having that realization and that awareness because not a lot of people
Right.
do have that. It's interesting because with like kids and devices a few weeks ago, and I'm very mindful of this when I'm out because I'm curious because I talk about this in my podcast. I'm like, just I like to share things that I'm observing so people can like either see themselves in the scenario or get inspired to like see it from a different perspective. And I was at the park with my family and my kids were going down the slide and there was a couple sitting next to us and her kids are playing around my kids and they're going down the slide and they're like, Mom, 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 like watch me, I'm going down the slide. And she was, I don't know what social media, but I knew she was on social media because she was turning to her husband. She's like, "Oh, did you see that? Whoever her neighbor, Amber, did you see that they got a trampoline in their backyard?" She's like, "Look, they got a trampoline in their backyard." I'm like, the fact that your neighbor got a trampoline in their backyard is more important to you in this moment than your child who's proud of themselves for going down the slide or wants your attention so bad of them going down the slide. Like it's just become so casual and we are losing the moments that actually matter. And so the message that's being sent to our children or to the people who we love in our life non-verbally is that this is more important, that this is what matters to me.
It's going to be so interesting to see our generation of children to be older and how they interact.
Yes.
Like, we have our baby boomers who are like exiting, and then we have us that are like coming in and like shaking up the world, right? I feel like we're all like creatives and we all want
Yes.
to own our own business and like have this movement. And then we have the next generation that's going to come in and like, I mean, we're already seeing it in the workplace about the entitlement, people on their phones, comparison, mental health, like all these things. Like I'm so worried about our children's generation and like what that's going to look like socially because
It is terrifying.
it is.
I know, it is terrifying. And it's interesting because there are all these statistics out there around like devices and children or social media and children or adolescents. And rightfully so. We should be like surveying and like paying attention to these things. But I also feel like in the emphasis of that, there is shockingly compared to like the amount of information out there on like children and adolescents to adults and devices and adults and social media, there's not even enough to like compare the two. And so I'm going, hold up. Just because we turned 18 doesn't mean that we're exempt from the damaging effects of these things, right? I'm like, oh, we're 18, sweet, you don't have to worry about you anymore. Like, no, it still is a problem and it can still cause problems because if we, the adults who are in charge of the children, in charge of the adolescents, we first have to know our stuff. We first have to have it together because that's ultimately what they're going to learn from, hopefully, where they're going to learn from is from our behavior. And of course, as they grow, they can take or leave what we taught them. But at least we can know what we're doing is making an impact on them, like for the better or for the worse.
Yep.
So, anyways, yes, just because we turned 18, I'm like, we adults like still need to have these conversations. Like, hello,
Yeah.
it's not exempt. We need to survey and like get to know this even more for the adults because it's so important for the children at the end of the day that their parents can understand and start doing things differently to help them ultimately and help themselves.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I think one of the takeaways I listened to your podcast is like, how do you become like a multi-million dollar business by not being on social media? Like that movement, I think would be so freaking cool to be like, I just grew this massive business without being on social media. Like
It would
I
be
know it can be
awesome.
done.
Yes, it can. And people are doing it. And that's the
Yeah.
thing that we don't realize. Like, there are avenues. Again, social media is an incredibly powerful tool, but it isn't the only tool.
Yeah.
It isn't the only one. It's not the only way. And I think it's the comfortable way where it's like, okay, this is kind of laid out for me and this is how I can do this. It's almost like the easy. I'm not going to say that social media is easy, but like
Yeah.
it's laid out there, this is what you can do versus like, okay, how can I be creative? How can I go maybe against the norm? Maybe that could even be beneficial for me in some ways because I am doing things a little bit differently. And that's kind of the approach that I take towards it. And also, okay, to speak to business. So SEO for certain things can also be something that can be utilized through like adding a blog to your website. I have a person in my community who lives in South Africa and she gets a lot of her business through her blog from like 3 years ago. She still updates the blog, not frequently, but she's like, it's a post that I had made 3 years ago and it's getting a lot of traction right now because something SEO wise is like trending at this time. And so people are finding her through her blog. So there's things like that. That's like, that's another way that isn't social media, but that's
Well,
something
and
you could
also
maybe put
before
some,
social media, how are these businesses
how, yes,
how are they even happening anyways and how so it's like I mean obviously it can be done but we just like get so sucked into like what's new and shiny and fun and pretty and where everyone's
absolutely.
at and like just get back to the basics and again that's my thing is like get back to the connections, get back to the relationships, go to a networking event, meet people organically that way, email them after, connect with them, grab a cup of coffee. Like you don't always have to engage with them on social media.
Right. Amen.
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 Oh my God, there's so much to talk about, but I love all of these. We've touched on like everything. I want to know like what's next for you, what's on the horizons for you, and like how can people like get involved in this?
Yes. So I actually am coming out with my first book in the next month. I don't even have an exact date, which is kind of crazy that I'm that close, but I don't have an exact date yet. Beginning of October is when it's going to be released. And I'm really excited about it because I think this is going to be the best way to have this type of impact
Mhm.
with just getting people to explore and to become aware of the role social media plays in their life. And the book is called The Social Media Shift. And it's all about shifting the perspective, shifting the behaviors around how we're viewing and how we're interacting with social media. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also launching my brand. It's called Offline Worldwide. And it's just spreading the message through visually for the people in my community to actually wear something that you put on and you can be proud of, like you are prioritizing the connections in your life offline instead of online. Anyways, I'm excited about those two things. And that's like the biggest thing is my book, honestly. I'm so excited
Yeah.
about the book and I'm excited for the movement and the impact that I'm trying my very best to have and that I've been able to help so many people up to this point, and I'm just getting started and it's really exciting. It's a really exciting place for
I
me
mean,
to be.
even to think that this movement could really shift things in the mental health world in
Yes.
space, because I think that, I mean, we didn't even really like, I wrote down comparison because I wanted to like revisit that about how social media can affect your mental health. Maybe you can come on again when to talk about that. But that is another thing, right? Especially for like the younger
Absolutely.
generation. But like, how cool would it be that this movement and all the work that you're doing is what is that changing point and that pivotal moment to change mental health for people,
Oh, that would be my
right?
dream come true.
Like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you're
I'm
gonna
glad that
get
you
there.
see that too. Yes.
Yeah.
It's always affirming to me if other people see it too. Because I'm like, I promise I'm not crazy. Like, this is a thing. And this is really important. And I'm really grateful for people like you who are willing to allow me to share with your community. I am so grateful. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
this
no,
opportunity.
I see so much good things happening for you. I love the message. I love what you're doing. So thank you for taking my email because that's how I reached out to her. I didn't reach
Yeah.
out to her on social media.
Love email.
I went to her website, I found her email, and I emailed her like old school way. Um,
Yes.
but I'm so excited to see what happens and where you take this. I am a huge supporter. Thank you for just shifting my mindset a little bit. Definitely like have a lot of takeaways from this. And then I'll put in the show notes how to find you, how they can listen to you, how they can get involved in the movement. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Heather. This has been great.